Hi folks, today we have a guest. That guest is my insurance agent. Mike, will you introduce yourself?
My name is Mike Fulmer of Fulmer Insurance Agency. Thanks for having me today, John.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had a couple of different insurance agencies over the years of running our company as a manufacturing entrepreneur, and it's actually a super fascinating topic to me because it ends up that it's not only important, but frankly required. So I asked Mike to come in today to talk about, simply put, what is insurance for a small machine shop, a job shop, or a manufacturing company?
Yeah, so insurance is basically protection for that what if that can and does happen every day. You know, you can put a business plan together and you can run your business every day, but you know, when the unexpected things happen, that's when insurance steps in and makes sure that you're made whole again. So the things that are happening right now down in Texas with the power going out and water pipes freezing and dumping hundreds of gallons of water into people's homes and businesses. It's hard to plan for that.
Perfect. And Mike and I actually just sat down and went through the Saunders Machine Works policy, and one of the reasons I honestly moved to Mike a couple of years ago was I was struggling to get some understanding of what insurance was doing for us. And for us, you know, we have a facility, so, and jump in here if I'm saying anything incorrect, but we need insurance for one level to protect both our employees and guests, and like this sort of slip and fall, if you will. Is that fair?
There's a bunch of different levels of it, but yeah, you need to have your insurance for your slip and trip for not only your employees here on the premises, but people coming onto the premises, to pick orders up, any number of things. Yeah.
But then we also, and this is what I loved, is we have a kind of machine shop specific insurance. Is it a rider or a policy?
Endorsement.
Endorsement, thank you.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
if for any of you out there that are looking for insurance, I believe it's state specific, right? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, but we talked to a bunch of different people, both insurance agents and I talked to other manufacturers that I knew of saying, who are you using? And I connected with Mike because one of the first things he said to me was, hey, I know this carrier, because you're a broker, right?
Agent,
excuse me.
Agency.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Has an endorsement that really speaks to what we do here. So explain what an agent is and then that endorsement for me.
Yeah, so the agent or agency is kind of the go-between between the insurance company and you as the business owner. So I'm considered an independent agent, so I work with a number of different insurance companies, and that allows me to pick and choose who's going to have the best deal for you as the client. The coverage or endorsement that John's referring to is called an equipment breakdown endorsement. It's been around for a little while, but it has really picked up steam, I feel like, in the last few years, because it's a really unique endorsement that kind of fills in some of the gaps that a standard property policy may have. So basically what it's going to do for you is it's going to pick up coverage for any kind of built-in appliances and machines, so your HVAC systems, your production machines, communication systems like your phones and computer systems, things like that. And it's going to protect you if you have a mechanical or electrical breakdown of that component. So, you know, power surges, short circuits, things of that nature. Some of it will even include operator error. So if you have a CNC machine go down for one of those reasons, a lot of times your property policy is not going to pick that up, whereas this endorsement can. And for, you know, a few $100 a year, I think it's a very valuable endorsement to have.
That's what really jumped out at me is, and this is the sort of finesse element of insurance that you as a business owner or an entrepreneur have to decide is, when do you actually file that claim? You know, is it worth it? And we had a bump on one of our Haas machines a while back, and I picked up the phone and I talked to Mike and I said, hey, I don't know if I want to file a claim for this under my breakdown endorsement, but if I do, what do you need from me? Do you need to handle talking and interfacing with the folks to get that repair done? Do you need documentation? And it was great, and I ended up, it was not, I'll put it this way, the repair cost was barely over my annual premium, and I thought, that probably doesn't make sense to file a claim because I'm under the belief that if you keep filing claims, you're going to pay for that some way or another. Does that make sense?
Yep,
right.
Absolutely.
But still, super valuable to have that comfort, knowing not only that we have a breakdown policy, but frankly that our policy is with a company that understands what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've had the conversation, you know, it's always a good idea to know where your threshold is of when you want to file a claim.
Yeah.
Because as you said, you know, you don't want it to be a maintenance policy. It's not something you want to file a claim, you know, every time you turn around, because A, you're going to end up paying that back once your rates start going up, and B, frequent claims can cause problems with even finding somebody wanting to insure you.
Yeah.
So it's something to kind of think about and know where your threshold is as to when you want to file a claim.
What about folks that are doing not so much job shop work, but more product development, product design, manufacturing, shipping a product out? Is that something you would still carry and cover under the same type of policy that we've been talking about?
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, you're going to have basically two types of coverages on your policy. You know, you're going to have your property coverage, and then you're going to have your liability coverage. So your property coverage is going to vary widely depending on if you're in a full commercial building or if you're in a pool building in your backyard. That can kind of run the gamut. Your liability coverage, the cost may differ greatly from one shop to another, but the premise and the coverage of it's pretty much the same.
Okay.
You know, you're insuring yourself against your business or your product causing bodily injury or property damage.
And so if you're just starting out, whether you're in high school or college or a weekend warrior, and you know, you're making a company that makes camera mounts or knives or anything, but let's say you're still doing that in your house, should you have insurance, or you know, when is that time you should start thinking about talking to an insurance agent about getting a policy?
Yeah, I would recommend anybody that is running any type of business to have that conversation with your agent. You know, oftentimes, especially when you're starting out, insurance isn't going to be as expensive as you may think it is. If you're operating a business and you're selling a product, you have an exposure there. And if something does go wrong and somebody gets hurt or something goes south, you know, you want to make sure that you have some protection in place. Otherwise, you can end up paying out of pocket, and I promise you that's going to cost a lot more than what your premiums would cost you.
If you're that young entrepreneur who's in their own house or maybe even their parents' house, any piece of advice of how a business policy is going to interact if there's also a residential dwelling or a residential homeowner's policy?
Sure. So again, this is a great conversation to have with your agent because they can kind of identify what your exposure is here. So, you know, you're going to have obviously some machinery that's going to be on the premises that you're going to probably want to insure. You know, if you know, say the garage catches fire and it burns up, you may want to have that insured. Or even worse, if the machine itself catches fire and burns down your parents' house,
Not good.
Not good at all. You're going to want to have some insurance for that. And then as far as how that is going to interact with, you know, with a residential, like a homeowner's policy, again, a conversation because it's going to vary from one company to another. Rule of thumb is typically if you have a business operating at a residential premises, the insurance companies typically want to have both policies with the same company. That way, if there is a loss, you know, you have one company adjusting the claim versus two companies trying to figure out who owes what.
But it is possible.
It is absolutely possible, yes.
Awesome. That's good. That's good to know. And it's interesting because what we've seen is folks don't necessarily think they need insurance. And honestly, as the non-insurance agent, there may be some truth to that. If you just made your first widget and shipped it out, that may not be the necessary case where you've exposed yourself to significant amounts of liability. But what happens is when you hit certain events that happen, you're all of a sudden asked for your insurance information. Like, for instance, if you want to purchase a machine and there's any form of financing on that, they're going to say, hey, we need you to assign, what is it called? Additional insured?
Additional insured?
Right.
Yes.
So that may be the trigger that causes you to start the conversation with your insurance agent, but it's great to have that conversation ahead of time so that way that process doesn't slow you up on trying to move forward with a piece of equipment. Similarly, if you're making that breakout move from your house to a leased premises, I don't know of a single commercial lease in the United States that doesn't have an insurance clause in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, you don't want to be in a leased building and cause damage to that building without insurance because, again, then you're paying out of pocket and probably paying a lot more than what you would in premiums.
Are there any things you'd add in terms of common questions that you get or misconceptions?
You know, I would suggest a couple other coverages to be aware of when you're looking at insurance for your machine shop. You want to make sure that if you have any like patterns or dyes or molds, I know those can be pretty common, and some can be kind of rare, kind of expensive. Have that conversation and make sure that those are properly covered on your policy. Make sure that if you are doing any kind of delivering or shipping or anything like that, that you're aware of what coverage you have or don't have.
What do you mean by that? Like if we put a expensive piece of a product on our own truck and deliver it to somebody?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah. Yep. The other thing is if you were doing some kind of work on somebody else's property, so if you're taking something in and you're running it through your CNC machine or doing some kind of fabrication work to it, make sure you're aware of having coverage or not having coverage for that piece of property. Your coverage for your property versus somebody else's property are two different things, and they need to be specified separately on your policy. The other one I would recommend considering anyways is business income coverage. And we just had this conversation actually. If the what if happens, are you able to sustain not having any income for a period of time while your building is being repaired or your machine is being repaired or things like that? Business income coverage can come in and pay you what you would have made while that claim is being adjusted and repairs are being made.
Thank you. And my humble piece of advice, seriously, is part of your job as an entrepreneur is to build out resources in your team. And in some respects, your insurance agent is part of your team because you want to have this conversation and enjoy the process. Take the time to find people that can have these conversations with you because I guarantee you'll meet insurance agents, accountants, or attorneys who just you don't connect with or don't have that passion or want to help you, but they are out there, and it's night and day when you find somebody who can say, no, we get what you're doing, we've got a carrier that understands this, they know how to underwrite it, and that's actually key because the more a carrier or an insurance provider understands what you do, frankly, the more competitive I've found they're going to be on your policy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Awesome. Can you talk about, is there any way of generalizing what insurance costs? I know that's a super broad and non-specific question, but I know where I was 15 years ago and I'm in my house and I'm like, man, I don't want to expose myself to some huge cost that I can't afford, and maybe we're only doing, tens of thousands of dollars a year in revenue. So very little profit, but man, it would have been like, is there any way you can start explaining or thinking about rates?
Yeah. So again, it's going to depend if you're working out of your basement or garage or if you're in a full-on machine shop building, insuring building and contents and things like that. So it can range a great deal. To start out with just liability premiums, you're probably going to be somewhere under $1,000 at a minimum premium. Okay. And then, depending on what else you add into the mix there, obviously it can go up, exponentially from there, just depending on what your situation is and what all you're insuring. But, for the guy starting out or gal starting out of their basement or whatever, the policies are affordable. I don't think it's anything that's going to be a great expense. It's going to be too much of a burden for you.
Yeah. And I know we have our premium, which has the whole overall building and so forth. But when I email Mike and say, hey, we picked up a new Haas machine, and he adds that to our insurance, I get an additional premium invoice, mm-hmm. and it's sometimes it's under $100 or $100 and some bucks for the whole year. Now that's obviously not representative of the whole policy. Sure. But it's not that much to add on insurance for a full-blown CNC machine.
No, it's not.
Awesome.
A lot cheaper to do it that way than the alternative.
Yes, it is. Well, thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on, and hopefully this was informative and helpful, and happy to help.
And so for folks that do want insurance, Mike probably won't say this because he's a pretty humble guy, but if you're in Ohio, I guess they could call you. Is that
Absolutely,
fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Google for just local insurance agents and have those conversations?
Absolutely. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm more than happy to answer questions. It is kind of state specific like we talked about, but I know agents all across the country, so I'm more than happy to refer people out if I can.
Awesome. We'll throw Mike's contact information and website in the video description. Otherwise, folks, hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed. Take care. See you soon.